So many people have sent in questions about Jean Luc Brunel. We've had various leads. People were speculating about him being on the run around the world. And on this channel, we really have hammered the backgrounds of Epstein, the background of Maxwell, and Prince Andrew and the royal family to an extent. Now, when I wrote about Pablo Escobar, I quickly learned that all the good stuff about Escobar was in the Spanish-speaking world, because that's where he's from. So, as you can imagine, all the good stuff about Jean-Luc Brunel is in France. And today, for the very first time, and I'm hoping we can make this a regular thing, we are honored to have Fred on the live stream. And he has got his own YouTube channel. It's called French ConAction. Videos are all in French. I'm sure some of you out there speak French, and I would urge you to go down and check what he's doing out, because he is completely focused on Jean-Luc Brunel and his role in the Epstein case, being a partner in crime with Maxwell. Now, I often ask guests to send me some talking points before we start. And this is how comprehensive Fred's research is. He sent me 9 pages on Microsoft Word. So before we start going over the first section, which is, who is this guy, Jean-Luc Brunel? Like I said, we know the history of Maxwell Epstein, but we really don't know a comprehensive history of Jean-Luc Brunel. That's the first section tonight, if we can get through it within 2 hours. The second section is going to be about Brunel and Epstein and Maxwell's relationship. And then the third section is going to be after Epstein's death. Brunel, speculated it was in Brazil, but he was in fact in France, preparing his defense with his lawyer, Corinne Dreyfus Smith. So all that idle tabloid speculation is going to be going out the window. We've got thorough research tonight with Fred. And first off, Fred, huge thank you for doing this. This is so unique and original and exclusive. Could you just introduce yourself to the viewers and tell them a little bit about you, what your work is, and how you come to investigating Jean-Luc Brunel?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Shaun. It's a pleasure being here. And I've been following you for quite some time, and very impressed with obviously all the work you've done and the contribution you have brought to the international scene with regards to the Epstein case. And I think to answer your question as to where I come from and how I got to get interested in the Jean-Luc Brunel and the Epstein affairs, it started a long time ago. I've been following this Epstein affair since 2008, so it's nothing new for me. I've lived abroad most of my life. I've recently came back to France to live in France and realized how little people talk about the Epstein affairs and how very little knowledge was available to the French people. So I thought this will be a great opportunity to start to put down on paper what I've researched over the years, the information that I've gathered through various sources, which I was speaking to at the time, which I'm still speaking with today, and decided to give it a shot with a YouTube channel that's going to be mainly directed at not true crimes, but really pointing the fingers at these white-collar criminals, the people that are involved in crime for so long, and it has been just a habit. And these white-collar criminals are also very present in my own countries. They've been doing things for years, and they tend to get away with it every time, every single time. So it was time for us to say enough is enough, put the fist on the table and say, look, we're going to do the investigation, since the mass media are not prepared to do the job. They're just not giving us any news. They tend to go alongside the voice of our governments or whatever is their agenda, but certainly nothing near to the truth. So it's time for us to simply do the hard work, do the legwork, trying to understand what's really going on There is a lot of story to tell about the pedocriminality, these pedophile rings that are perpetrating crimes on a regular basis in France. We know about them. We know who's involved. We've been looking at these rings for quite some time. The police has done their job, but it's time for us now to provide the information to the global public at large. It's time. And that's why we're here today.
So you talked about the media there. Recently, then, we had the Maxwell released documents, and she was feeding the media with Epstein information about Virginia having she'd committed some kind of crime or other, just to destroy the victims, the credibility of the victims. Is the media in France, is it as incestuous with the elite pedo criminals as it is in America and the UK?
Well, the position, it depends which media. Again, the mass media, what I call the regular suspects, will always go alongside what they've been told to say. So the government has a line of communications, and they will just simply go along with that line of communication. So they will do a little presence and talk about a subject, but it's really scratching the surface. They're not taking any positions. They're not using the really wonderful tool they have in their hand to actually provide a very clear message to these pedocriminals and to these pedophiles that, we're after them, we're onto them. They don't do that. They just say, oh, we've heard a story in the United States, or recently Ghislaine Maxwell has released, we got access to some of her 2016 depositions on, but that's it. It doesn't go any further than that. Some even television, absolutely leading television in France, don't even talk about it. So that's how bad it is. They just don't want to approach or get near to the subject of pedophilia and pedophile ring in France. This is the subject they stay away from.
So you said then, to fill that gap, there's not just you, there's a whole group of activists researching Jean Luc Brunel, who you are collaborating with right now. Could you tell us about that movement, please?
Yeah, it's not really a movement, but I could give you at least one name. It's called F Society, F for France and Society. It's basically all independent investigators, people that do documentary, like myself, that has YouTube channels that do proper investigations, that are dedicated to get to the bottom of the Epstein story as far as the French side concerned. We want to know what happened to these girls in France, but also some of the girls which were allegedly trafficked to Little St. James, this triplet, this 12-year-old girl. So all that has created a movement, and it's been going on for quite some while. There's some really good researchers that have done really the legwork. I mean, really good work. And they're not only focused on the Epstein story, but also focused on the major pedophile ring that are active today on the French soil.
So you mentioned the triplets there. For people new to this story, then, let's just do a quick recap. In Virginia Roberts' testimony, she said that Jean Luc Brunel had sent Epstein 12-year-old triplets who had performed oral sex upon him as a birthday present, and Epstein was bragging about how great that was. Now, have these triplets been located?
It's the question. It is the big questions, and the answer is actually in the question. And I'm going to explain to you exactly about these triplets, what I found out. And the only thing you could find out about these triplets is actually within the way the investigations, the French prosecutions, have started and opened an investigation. They were not prepared to open an investigation. It's only when the story of the triplet came out and it was really making some noise that it refers to sex trafficking. It means that 3 girls, triplets, 12 years old, come from France, from a very unfavored background, disadvantaged backgrounds. They are basically trafficked through a pedophile rings, which obviously Jean-Luc Brunel must have access to. I don't think Jean-Luc Brunel is running a pedophile ring in France. This is not the case, but he has access to that. There's many pedophile rings in France, and especially in Paris. So because of this information, I think this is what has pushed forward this investigation. And Minister of Justice and the Parquet of Paris, basically the prosecution office, had no other choice but to open an investigation based, and that's the wording that is very important, looking at protecting the victims, the French victims of Epstein or Jean Luc Brunel, but also the French victim that has been abused abroad in the Little St. James Island or even on the United States soil. So this is a very precise investigation. It is not targeted to American or Australian ladies being abused or young girls being abused on the French soil. It is addressed to French citizens, French young girls being abused in France, but also abroad. So we'll go into that. I'll explain to you a little bit more about it, but right now there's no official explanation as to where this 12 years old triplet comes from. There's absolutely no information, whether it's from the prosecution, whether it's from the police itself, and we have sources. We still don't know how Brunel managed to get these three girls, traffic them to Little St. James and offer them for Epstein's birthday. We still don't have any answers, I'm afraid.
Wow. It's good to hear that it is being researched that thoroughly, though, and these kids and these victims are not forgotten. So, you know, we were all campaigning for Maxwell to get raided and spend a long time in prison. And I assume that one of your primary goals with you and the other activists there is for Jean Luc Brunel to end up behind bars.
Absolutely. I think people want answers. It's not just French people. The world wants answer. You know, this is horrendous, absolutely horrific crimes that have been committed. I think there's enough elements, you know, with different affidavits, different witness testimonial that assert that something happened, something really big happened, something that should have never happened, and people have questions. And anybody that has the possibility to bring clarity to what happened should be, you know, making every effort possible to bring the truth, and more importantly, making sure that these victims are given justice. And that's what you and I, people like us that are out there doing these efforts, we're doing it because we want these victims to be recognized not only as victims, but also as survivors. These are people that have had to reconstruct their life. And if we can help a little bit along the way to get them justice, then so be it.
So before we get into the history of Jean Luc Brunel, then, is there anything else you would like to say about your, you know, where you are with this?
Well, at the moment, the feeling is that it's the same that we've had for years. And speaking with other investigators, it's always basically the stories are buried, literally buried. And it's not the first pedophile ring, the pedophile stories. You will see along the way the conversation we're going to have today that this is something that has happened in France and is still happening today. So it's an ongoing process. And the government, for some reason, is just simply not giving itself the means, but also the desire to combat this pedophile ring, which obviously asks a lot of and generates a lot of questions amongst the investigators. What is the cover-up? What's going on? Why these people are not brought to justice, or why they always get away with it? So this is where we are today. We're asking ourselves a lot of questions, and we end up ourselves with very little means to do the investigation, you know, on our own.
Have you managed to identify the people in power that are blocking this information from coming out?
Some of them, again, before I go further in that, and we will go further in this today, but I want to say to your audience that it's extremely dangerous in France. And I'm really serious when I say that. When you start to go and investigate pedophile ring in France, it is a very no-go subject. People have died in the past, and people are really threatened about talking about it, especially when you're starting to question people in the fashion industry, in the model world. It's literally people are scared and tell you, look, I don't want my name everywhere. I don't want to talk. It's extremely hard to get, you know, witness or sources that are reliable that's going to want to come forward, whether, you know, on record or simply at least giving you the inside information, their experience with these criminals.
Brilliant. So excellent explanations so far of the project that you're undertaking. And I'm just looking now at the 9 pages that you sent. So we're going to start then with Jean Luc Brunel. He was born in 1946 as Jean Luc Charles Raymond. And how do we pronounce that name?
Ben Chamoul. It's a short story, and definitely not going to linger into that. And I'll tell you the reason why it's not important, because I'm speaking to people that know Jean Luc Brunel for 35 years. So they know him very well. They were with him in France, they were with him in the United States. And even them, they never knew that his name was Charles Raymond Benchamoul. And the only reason for that is because he actually changed his name in 1962. There was a lot of people from North Africa, from Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco. These people, after the Second World War, starting to immigrate, and especially in the 50s and the 60s, people are immigrating back, coming back to France, and all of them have Jewish name or Arabic names. And for some people, for business purposes, they felt that they needed to change their name because, you know, being a Jewish back in the 60s, back in Paris, was certainly not an easy thing to do. So again, I don't want to give the wrong impression. This is not about targeting a community, but the reality is that a lot of Jewish people back from North Africa at the time changed their name, and that's exactly what happened with Jean Luc Brunel. They changed their name in 1962, and they was always known as Jean Luc Brunel or the Brunel family. Brunel has a brother, and only has one brother that I know, is called Arnaud Brunel, and we will see further down this discussion that he also played a role, some kind of role, in the development of the career and the business of Jean Luc Brunel in the United States.
So the story of Jean Luc Brunel was not rags to riches. We have got that his father was a Parisian real estate manager for high society.
Yes, he's they were well off, well educated people. They were making very good living, and he was really already in the prominent society in France. He's a real estate broker. He's very good at what he does. They make good money. Jean-Luc Brunel didn't kind of grew up in a very in a let's say underprivileged society. He had access to good school, good education. He was surrounded with people from the aristocracy and people that have money and power. So he grew up. He's a well-educated guy, absolutely immaculate dress packer, as you guys would say in the UK, and he's a yeah, he's a very charming guy. He's really well spoken, well educated. So it's easy to understand how he could manipulate people and how he could charm them in doing what he had a plan to do.
So looking at his history of relationships, he had a few marriages, and they were to models.
Yeah, he was a very charming guy, you know, and more importantly, he's a party animal. That's what people need to understand. Brunel was a party animal, loved the nightlife, loved to be seen, loved to be around people famous. He's extremely ambitious, and he's a social animal. He feeds out of other people, and he likes to be around beautiful women. He's attracting a lot of beautiful women because he's surrounded with people that have money, and he will have two marriages in his life. His first wife will be a Swedish model, a stunner, absolutely gorgeous. Her name is Helen Hochberg, and they will eventually divorce in 1979. He will have a second marriage, which too will not be successful, unfortunately for him. It was a 2 years long time girlfriend, and he eventually get married with her. She was from Illinois, from Lyons in Chicago, and her name was Roberta Cherko, absolutely stunner. She was on all the cover of Elle magazine and Vogue magazine, Cosmopolitan, you name it. She was there, and she was big.
So for people who've jumped on the live stream and they're wondering what this is about, just to update you guys, tonight is the first of our series of comprehensive live streams on the life and the crimes of Jean Luc Brunel. And because this is number one, we are right now going into the complete family history of Brunel and how he rose up in the modeling world. So in 1974, Brunel met with Claude Francois, famous French pop singer. What music did he sing? Do we know any?
Not my music for sure, but some pop music, you know, pop of the charts, you know. So, I mean, I was born in the late 60s, you know. For me, you know, I was 10 years old when these guys were at the top of his game. But it's irrelevant. At the end of the day, it's not about whether I like the music or not. It was the fact that he was at the top of the chart. This guy's extremely famous, always surrounded with absolutely gorgeous blonde girls behind him. There was the beginning where, you know, the singers will surround themselves with beautiful girls and do this choreography. And that's exactly who Claude Francois was. Even there was a name for the girls that he was surrounding himself with. They used to call them the Claudettes. So that's how, you know, how famous and how, you know, well marketed this was. But anyway, the story is very, very simple. Basically, Claude Francois is a very ambitious guy. He's at the top of his career, and he has two ambitions. He wants to open a magazine for all sexualities, a kind of a Playboy magazine that he will call Absolute. And the second project that he has in mind is to open a model agency that will be known as Girls Models. So Claude Francois will start the agency. It's going to obviously surround himself with professional people, but the early starts of the agency was very difficult. They were very much struggling to sign up models. And during one of his nights out, Claude Francois, will bump into Jean Luc Brunel, which obviously was not really a big issue since he was most of the time outside in the right places at the right time, surrounded with beautiful girls. He's going out with Helen Hochberg. She's a stunner. I mean, you know, you will notice her in a party. And Claude Francois, like that, start to talk with Jean Luc Brunel. And what's happening is Claude Francois is going to offer an opportunity for Jean Luc Brunel to become the main model scout for Girls Model. And that's really the first time that Jean Luc Brunel actually is coming officially into the modeling business, and is starting with someone that is extremely well known. And this guy is Claude Francois. They're going to work together for a period of 6 months. Approximately. He's not going to stay there very long, not because he didn't like Claude Francois, but I think he was extremely ambitious. He was traveling across Denmark, Sweden. I mean, Jean Luc Brunel is the kind of guy that will go in a supermarket to talk to someone tall, blonde, because that's what the fashion industry wanted at the time. They wanted these girls to be 14, 15 years old. They want them super tall, blue eyes, green eyes, gray eyes, you name it. They have to be thin, they have to be pale, and they have to be blonde. That's what was selling at the time. And he was traveling all across Scandinavia, as well as in London. There's stories about him being in London where Girls Model was trying to get contract with Suzanne. I can't really remember her name. Forgive me for that. But they couldn't get her. And then Brunel traveled to London and actually get this model and bring her back under the agency of Girls Model and sign her. So he's very tenacious. He knows what he's talking about. He's got a very good eyes. We can't take that away from him. He was very good at what he was doing. The only thing we would like to take away from him is his freedom, but that's for later on.
Fred, a few people in the chat have asked if you can put your microphone, turn your microphone up a bit, or get it closer to your mouth, perhaps, or which.
Okay, let me see.
Yeah, if you can maybe put it closer to your mouth.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Maybe I'm going to squeeze him in my. Let's see how close we can get with that. Okay, do you want to check if it's better? Is it better for you guys?
Yeah, it sounds a little bit better. Let's. I'll ask them in the chat. In the live chat, can you hear Fred? Okay. Just want to say a few little things.
Okay.
That's better. That's better.
I'm going to keep it like that. That's
keep it like that. Keep it like that. That's it.
I try not to swallow it, you know. But... oh, God.
All right, I'm just going to recap then. Right now, we are going through a fascinating history of Jean Luc Brunel before we get to his relationship with Epstein and the crimes that were committed with Maxwell. We've never had someone from France come on who's part of a community who are just researching this like crazy and finding everything out. So this is exclusive. A lot of new information I'm hearing tonight that I've never heard before. Fred here sent me 9 pages of notes for tonight. So it looks like it's probably going to turn into a series. Just to recap then, Brunel was born in 1946. By the early 1970s, In his late 20s, he clicked up with a famous French pop singer, Claude Francois. And that's how Brunel actually got into the modeling industry. He was hired as a scout to improve the portfolio of girls models for this agency that Claude Francois had created. But he only stayed with the agency for 6 months. He then decided to offer his services to Francois Leno, part of Paris, director of Paris Planning Agency, which was a leading model agency in Paris. So he's rising up the ranks then.
Absolutely. This is the time, I think he's rebounded on his relationship with Claude Francois that allowed him to now offer his service to much more prominent model agencies in Paris, and Paris Planning was really definitely in the top 5 in Paris. So this was a beautiful way for him to start his career, and he's going to do some great job. He's going to learn the trade, and he's going to learn the craft, and he's going to be really good at it. People know that he's talented. He's a hardworking person, and he's going to work there for from end of 1974 to beginning of 1975. But yet again, the dice not going to go and play in his favor, because rapidly someone's going to turn up at the agency. It's going to be a gentleman called Gérald Marie. Gérald Marie is a protege of John Casablanca. John Casablanca, just a few words, is the founder of the Elite, the very well-known and established Elite model agency, which certainly even today, I believe, is the largest model agency in the world. So he's really a reference in the model agency. So John Casablanca is the son of a Spanish industrial, and he's basically based in between New York and Paris. He actually came earlier, a few years before, to try to open a model agency. It's called Élysée 3. Didn't work out, was a complete flop. Went back to New York, came back 2 years later, and open Elite, and Elite was an immediate, instant success. Now, Gérald Marie, just for the story, is coming back from New York. He's under the wing, on the very warm wing of the Dragon. It's very warm there, and he's protected, and he's going to do some great job as well. And François Lano will have to make a decision whether he's going to keep Jean Luc Brunel or whether he's going to keep Gérald Marie. And the decision is going to be quite straightforward. He's going to keep Gérald Marie, and Jean Luc Brunel is out. There was just basically a lot of challenge going on, a lot of competition, because it's a fierce, obviously, industry, and people are not prepared to share the success. So anyway, Brunel decided to move away from Paris Planning, and during that time, he's going to take a break. He's going to actually leave France. He's going to leave Paris for a year. He's going to go to Ibiza. He's going to go with a couple of friends there. He's going to open a bar, restaurants, not really about making money. Ibiza, for the American audience, it's an island, the Spanish water. It's beautiful. It's 300 years of sun. And this is where all these European, what we call bobos, they are bourgeois. They don't really need to work. They speak well. They're intellectual, artists, musicians, but they like to be surrounded with beautiful women. They will go to Ibiza. They will party there. A lot of drugs, a lot of parties. And Jean-Luc Brunel is going to enjoy all of that. It's not going to last long. He's going to quickly run out of money. I mean, I figured that out, that he's probably ran out of money. He's hanging around with Helen Hagberg, top model from Sweden. He's going to leave her behind. He's not going to carry on this relationship. I think he's a party animal, and probably quite selfish as well. And she was probably not getting the attention that I was required as a wife. So the relationship was tense. He decided to come back to Paris, and he's going to leave her behind. He's not going to come back unprepared. He has an old friend in Paris, someone that he has always kept in touch with. It's a lady called Karen Mossberg. She runs a model agency in Paris, in the 11th district of Paris. And the name of this agency is Karen Models. And for those that have looked into the Epstein case and the Jean-Luc Brunel case, this is a name that you should be familiar with, apart from MC Square in the United States. This is really where Jean-Luc Brunel started his career, make a name for himself, not only in France, but internationally speaking.
So you just brought up a name there, and I know, speaking with Donald McIntyre, who did some investigation into Jean-Luc Brunel and Gérald Marie a while ago. But now that Gérald's name is back in the news, there's parallels there with him and Jean-Luc Brunel. Could you just explain to people a bit more why he is back in the news presently?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely right to point that out. Basically, what's happening with Gerald Mary? Gerald Mary has been accused by 4 models, not later than September the 21st. So it's really literally a month ago. Gerald Mary was all over the news. What was funny about that is, if we can really laugh about it, but it was happening just at the opening of the Paris Fashion Week. So that was quite embarrassing for an icon. He was the European head of elite models, so he's not nobody. He was accused by 4 models of raping them, and another model also will add up also some, not charges, but obviously depositions against him. And she happened to be a former BBC undercover journalist. Her name is Lisa Brinkworth. She's currently 53 years old, and she has made some very, very serious allegations for sexual assault against Gerald Mary. So the events that she's referring to are events that allegedly took place in 1998. Now, the cherry on the cake with Lisa Brinkworth is that she eventually got access to a tape that was part of a documentary, and that was negotiated with the Elite Model Agency and BBC when it was released. So Elite Model Agency really endeavor really seriously for making sure this tape does not see the day, does not become public. And there was some negotiation with the BBC, and this tape basically remained pretty much never heard of, never been seen, never been shown. And what my understanding is that Lisa, through a friend that she has at the BBC, I don't think she works for the BBC any longer. She's 53 years old now, but she's definitely in contact with people at the BBC, and she has had access to that footage. And from what we understand, this footage is extremely incriminating towards Gerald Mary.
Wow. Do you think that they will suppress that, or it will get released at some point?
You see, it all goes down again to the status of limitation in France, so we know that the event that she's referring to are in 19, I don't want to say stupid thing, but around 1998. So just for you to understand the legal system in France, the status of limitation until 2017 was 10 years. So if a young girl, minor, get raped, she has 10 years to press charges. After 10 years is, sorry, you missed, bad luck, and nothing's going to happen. The story will be buried. And that's exactly what happened with Jean Luc Brunel, by the way. It's just most of these models that have came forward back in this late 70s, 80s, end of the 80s and 90s. They can't get justice because of the status of limitation, even though they've increased the limit now to 20 years. So until 2017, it was 10 years, and now 2020, it is 2020. It is actually 20 years for status of limitation. So this is a bit puzzling. We don't know. So far, the investigation is open, but we haven't heard from it. You see, France is very quiet about the investigation. They do not release any information to the public. So unless the media, the mass media, which have access and connection with the police, the investigation, various departments, even intelligence services, you're not going to get any information about that. So we are keeping our eyes open. We know that the material is absolutely, apparently, really spicy, and we think that there might be a chance that the police will feel that even though the status of limitation, they might decide to press charges. So we're waiting for that. He's a 70 years old guy. You have to know that he's still into the business to die. Gerald Mary actually owns a model agency called We Management. We being meaning yes, as everybody knows probably. So We Management is the model agency of Gerald Mary. It's funny the name because we, of course, when you're a minor and you have to deal with guys like that, we is the only option. If you say no, you don't work. As simple as that. It's we or you don't work.
Just a bit there on statute of limitations then. I'm sure a lot of people through watching these videos and the Epstein case are aware that the statute of limitations means if a crime is committed, a certain amount of years have elapsed after that crime, then the perpetrator can no longer be prosecuted. So we saw with the Harvey Weinstein case that some of the victims were beyond the time window of statute of limitations, so they couldn't prosecute Harvey Weinstein. But what the judge did allow at his sentencing was those women to come forward and give their testimonies, which did aggravate a factor that increases the sentence of the defendant. And we're seeing campaigns and laws being changed. Every country, every state has different laws, different statutes of limitations, and some of them are completely out of proportion and need adjustment. So, because when people are victims, there are a lot of conflicting emotions going through their heads at the time. And if they're kids, they might not understand the nature of what has occurred. And it's only in adulthood when they can look at it from a mature perspective, they can make that rational decision to go after the bastard and take them to court and try and get them locked up. But if the statute of limitations is over, by the time they've reached that level of maturity in their own lives to go after the bastards, then the bastards have got away with it.
Absolutely, Shaun. It's a real puzzling question. We've seen many different statements, but also interview made by we'll recognize psychologists, which clearly states that the psychology of the trauma that these young girls are going through can be, it can take a whole life, for her to find the strength, or for simply the memories to come back, because the mind has a tendency to put this kind of information aside, not dealing with it because it's just unbearable. So this is what I'm saying, is what we're dealing is with criminals that's going to go and completely destroy this young life. They're coming to the model industry, to the fashion industry with great dreams, with hope of a career. Some of them are, have the potential, the true potential to be successful and to be recognized for their talents. And unfortunately, these unscrupulous guys will come and will cross their path. And in one night, everything changes, and it will take a whole life for them to reconstruct themselves. And not all of them managed to do that. I've had a chance to speak with a couple of victims. I've exchanged a few words with Ticia Hussman as well. And she's not letting it go. And she's a brave girl, and she really wants Brunel to pay for the crimes and for what she had to go through with him. And I wish she was the only one, but she wasn't. There's so many. So that's what we're here today. We're going to fight to make sure these people are behind bars where they belong.
Okay, I'm just going to pause you here because we have had a question that is quite an interesting one. I was going to save the questions till the end, but Lena Ruggiero wants me to ask Fred if he knows about the involvement of any person or model that can help to search for information here in Brazil related to Jean Luc Brunel. Apparently, Epstein had a Brazilian butler in France. Do you know about anything about that?
Yeah, his name is Gabriel. He's Franco-Brazilian. He was indeed the butler. He works for Epstein for about 18 years. So he's a very loyal servant of Epstein. So I actually made a video about him, and I spoke in French, and I addressed him directly in my video, telling him that he's been giving us a lot of amount of bullshit. And sorry, excuse my French, but this is there's no other word to call it, because
is there a French word for bullshit?
Ouais, ils ont écouté beaucoup de conneries, des conneries, ouais, conneries. I would say conneries, but it doesn't sound like bullshit. It doesn't ring as good, so I'll take your word for that. Yeah, so he's hang on, let's check. I'm about to swallow this thing. Yeah, basically, he's a liar, simple as that. I called him out very quickly in France. I told him, I say, because he was interviewed very quickly by the press, and the press asked him, I say, but so what's happening with Epstein at the 22 Avenue Foch. We want to know what's going on. And obviously there was a raid. The police, after they opened the investigation, eventually 20 days later decided to finally organize a perquisition and a raid Epstein's house at the 22 Avenue Foch. And what Gabriel told us is very interesting. He told us a lot of things, actually. What he told us is that 2 days before the raid, he got a phone call from the trustees from Epstein's successions, the people that runs basically Epstein's properties around the world. And these guys, I believe probably guys like Darren Dyke or Richard Kahn, you know, I wouldn't be surprised. They sounds like good prospect. Anyway, they give him the order to go straight back to the house and to do the necessary to pay a visit to the apartment. That will be the terms that Gabriel used. Now, this guy's been working 18 years for Epstein. He knows the house better than Epstein himself. And he's telling us, oh, go and play a visit to the apartment. Well, if you want to translate that, probably it's basically go in there and clean up, go into this particular wardrobe and these places and make sure when these guys comes and nothing is there. You know, a bit similar to what happened on Little St. James, you know, when that big squad and Hollywood perquisition from the FBI, you know, they got there. How much they really got out there from there, I'm not quite sure. The second thing that is interesting about that, and to answer the question to the audience, is that models have come forward. 12 models have come forward in France. Most of them, they're going after Brunel. They told their story about Jean Luc Brunel's culture of abuse. And I wish I could say it's only Jean Luc Brunel, but it was really a culture in the late 70s all the way down to 2000s. This was a culture of abuse. And I will explain a little bit later during the conversation. We were going to develop that aspect, but why was happening and what was it tolerated as well. So I'll go back to that. But models, really, they've tried their best. We saw Ticia Huysman, the Dutch models, which was abused by Jean Luc Brunel. She told the story on many, many different platforms in France, but also abroad. And it's really a kind of pattern. You know, when you study pedophilia, when you study this pedophile ring or these predators, they all have the same MO. You know, it's all about getting the kick, not about having sex with a young girl. It's about getting away with it. That's what kicks and rocked their boat. And the models, they talked about it. They talked a lot about it. And we know Brunel was spending a lot of time in Sao Paulo at the MIGA, the MIGA model agencies in Sao Paulo. If you are from Brazil, I can tell you this model agencies is very close to the Jardim de Everest. That's where the agency is. I've looked into it, and he was a very good friend with, I can give you his name if I can remember it very quickly, but his name was, I can't remember, Nivaldo Oliveira Leta. That's the name of the directors of this Brazilian model agencies called MIGA Partners, and it is in Sao Paulo. What I can tell you about it, and something that nobody has really talked about it, and I found out it's actually come from the UK. I think there was a team from the Sun, and I'm not going to be 100% sure about that, if it's the Sun or the Mirror, but one of these well-known newspaper in the UK went actually around 2008 to knock the door at Jean Luc Brunel apartment in Miami. And when they knocked at the door there was a young lady that opened the door. She was from Brazil. And she confirmed to the journalist that she was actually living in this apartment. This apartment did belong to Jean Luc Brunel. And she was living there with two other Brazilian young models. And they confirmed they were working with MC Square in Miami. And they were the guests of Jean-Luc Brunel. Now, couldn't really confirm their age. They said they were, of age, but they looked very young. And they, more importantly, confirmed that Jean-Luc Brunel, I think the newspaper made that research about how big this apartment was, and it was a one-bedroom flat. So that's probably just a little information that I can give you. So I think models wants the truth, but to get the truth, you're going to take more than just knocking at a couple of few doors. You know, you're going to really put these people in a corner, and you're going to have the justice on your side, not giving them the choice, but to arrest these people.
Okay, before we proceed with the history of Jean Luc Brunel's career and rise in the modeling world, then you did mention two names just then. You mentioned Indike and Khan. Can you explain to the viewers who they are? And also, do you think they should be indicted as co-conspirators in the US courts?
Yes. Well, the answer is yes, 100%. I mean, these are the basically one, Darren Indike, he's, I believe he's the a lawyer. He's been a long-time lawyer for Jeffrey Epstein. And Richard Kahn, for those that have been following the Epstein case, he's the guys with the cap and then the red hoodie, which we can see coming out of the Upper Street Manhattan house, the former Villard house that belongs to Epstein, and he was going there before the raid as well to take some stuff out of the house, and we can see carrying bags and a little bit running away back to his car. He's the accountants. He's one of the accountants of Jeffrey Epstein. So these guys are in charge today of the successions of Epstein, and they're also in charge of the victim funds, the one that was established after the death or the suicide or whatever you want to call it of Jeffrey Epstein. They're in charge basically of compensating the victims. So they are in charge of the succession, basically.
Seems there's been their names pop up in a lot of Epstein's shady deals over the years, over and over. They're like reoccurring themes, those two.
It's a mystery why these guys have not been subpoenaed on questions, really and strongly questions, because if there are people that are really aware of the shady deals of Jeffrey Epstein, this definitely these two guys know better than anybody else. I believe they probably know even more than Ghislaine Maxwell. They organize it, so they have to be part of it. They must know what's going on.
Okay, just to recap then, Jean Luc Brunel, born 1946, early 70s. He started out as a model scout. Then he's climbing up the ladders of the modeling industry. The founder of Elite Models, John Casablancas, Gerald Marie is clicked up with Brunel. And then Brunel goes off to Ibiza. And then he comes back without his wife. They're going to divorce soon. But it's in the late 70s, after coming back from Ibiza, that Brunel's career takes off with Korean models. And he claims he discovered Mila Jovovich, Christy Turlington, and Sharon Stone, just to name a few.
Yes, that's right. I think this is the most glorious time from 1978 all the way down to 1988. These are the 10 years spans where Brunel's going to really make a name for himself. He's going to be traveling around the world. He's going to be the man to go to if you want to work in the industry. And if you look at the track record as far as the crimes and mainly the charges that should have been brought to him is definitely around that period of time. He had lots of money. Let's not forget that when we talk about the modeling agency, we tend to forget about naming the fashion industry itself, because without fashion industry, you don't have modeling agency. It just doesn't exist. The money comes from the fashion industry. And during this 10 years time, they were just throwing big tickets to the model agency. It was really a fierce battle getting that new model, that new top model. This is when the word top model was coming out. You know, being a top model, the place in the industry is New York, it is Paris, and it is Milan. Now, if you are a young model, you want to do career in this industry, you have to be traveling in these three cities in the world, and you have to stay for a while and have connection within the modeling agency to make sure that the fashion designers can see your profile, your portfolio. You're going to have to spend some time in Paris and obviously been with the best model agency to get the best job. And this is where Jean Luc Brunel was extremely strong and was able to access to all these girls coming from Canada, United States, Australia, you name it. They were coming from all around the world world with only one objective, to be the next top models. Brunel has is a very manipulative person. He knew exactly, many people that I've talked to told me that he knew exactly on which girl he needed to pick upon. He knew exactly which girl was vulnerable and the one that he should not even bother. So he was very well trained, and he had 10 years to develop that skills. He was going for the vulnerables. He was asking a lot of questions. And more importantly, he was entertaining relationship with foreign agencies, whether it was in Holland or in the United States. And he had no problem telling them that certain of the models could stay in his house that he bought in Avenue Hoche. This is the avenue where Karen's model's office were. And this is basically was his MO. He was convincing not only the parents, but also the agencies to have some of the models to stay in his house. So obviously people, I wouldn't say they're gullible, but they felt safe. Some of these girls didn't even speak a word of French. They want to know that they are taken care of. You're sending your 14-year-old kid in Paris. You want to know that someone, respectable is going to look after them. So are they going to be in an apartment next door, or are they going to be staying directly with the director of the agency? And that's exactly how Brunel used to proceed. He did the same with Tissia Huisman. He actually, the Belgian model agencies of Tissia Huisman, which sent her to Paris, told her, you got to stay with Jean Luc Brunel. And she found that very bizarre. She said, why would I need to stay with him? He's the director of an agency. I want an apartment, But they convinced her. They said, oh, it's safer. He's going to look after you. He's a very powerful guy. So you got to, it was just, sparking these girls with a lot of promise of making big money and giving them big careers. And unfortunately, what was waiting for them was a total different story.
So Jean Luc Brunel was on a roll then.
Oh,
from the 70s into the 80s. And
yeah.
then we had there was a 7-month investigation by CBS producer Craig Pies and reporter Diane Sawyer for 60 Minutes, which produced a segment, American Models in Paris, which came out on December 23rd, 1988, covering the conduct of Brunel and fellow Parisian modeling agent Claude Haddad. Did that end his role, or did he manage to cover up after that?
Well, it was definitely a turning point in Brunel's life, because this really had tarnished his reputation. And this was not just out of this documentary. This was a very well known, it was a knowledge in France, and especially in the fashion industry, in the model industry, that Jean-Luc Brunel had really a bad habit of drugging girls and abusing girls back in these days. He was very powerful. He had a lot of money, and he was extremely well protected. You see, there is a word that they use in the fashion industry called omerta. Omerta has come from the Latin word, but also the Italian word omerta. Omerta is homo, means man, a human being, and merta means humbleness and honor. And it refers to the mafias. It refers to the crime syndicate in Sicilia, where when you are part of the gang, when you're part of this family, you are made into this family, you do not talk. Period. You talk, you die. And that's exactly the same that you find in France in the model industry, in this industry. You just don't talk. People will rather look away rather than to say anything, because they have good job. They are amongst very famous people. They are surrounded with beautiful people. They are living in a cluster, amongst themselves and their reality. It might not just be our reality. What they were doing, what was happening was illegal, but somehow, somewhere, people were just, turning their head and their eyes away from it. And that needs to be said, Doesn't mean everybody is bad in this industry. Doesn't mean by the industry is not good. There's some really good people in this industry, people that are professional, extremely artistic and talented. And that's just not fair for those guys to say bad thing about the model industry. There are good people. Unfortunately, like Junior Bush will say, there's few bad apples, And these bad apples really rotten and give a bad smell to the baskets. And that's what happened for 10 years with Jean-Luc Brunel in Paris. Anyway, moving on to the story, what happened is that after this documentary, which was obviously quite tarnishing for Jean Luc Brunel, he decides to take his chances. And I think what he's going to do at this time is to convince his brother. I believe they had an exit strategy, but he convinced his brother and someone that is part of his circle, a guy called Etienne Desrois. And these guys have money. Arnaud Brunel is in the real estate. He's made quite a bit of money for himself. And close friend Etienne Desrois come from a very aristocratic, old aristocratic French family. I think the father is a marquis, the mother is a duchess and or princess. These are extremely wealthy people. And this guy is going to take the route for New York. They're going to be basically heading for New York. And their project is to open a new model agency with Kate Fates in New York.
And one of the companies they formed was Next Management Corporation. What was that about?
Well, Next Management Corporation, it's basically Kate Face with another gentleman called Joel Wilkenfeld. They always wanted to create a model agency based on the elite model, but giving it a global presence. So they exactly had the vision of what they wanted to do. Kate Face had the mean, she had the money, and she needed obviously very talented recruiter, a model scout to come along. She had, and she knew about Jean Luc Brunel. Jean Luc Brunel came up with a proposal, and they're going to basically set up this company, as you said, it's called Next Management Corporation. The Brunel brothers going to be holding a minority stakes in this company. They're going to own 25% of this company. The 75 other percent will be held by Kate Fates herself. So this is a interesting venture because it lasted quite some time, at least until 1996. So just to give dates to your audience, in 1988, Jean-Luc Brunel arrived in New York, in Manhattan, set up this company. In 1989, they signed the contract. And in 1996, so we are talking about around 8 years later, we have Jean-Luc Brunel and Arnaud Brunel that are literally separating themselves from Next Management company. They more, I would say it would be more appropriate to say they were kicked out of this company because Next Management company filed a complaint against Brunel's brother, suspecting them from diverting the models. What was happening, Shaun, is that the Brunel's brother, they were starting to basically siphon, suck the life out of that agency, signing all these other models, all the best models of Next Management, using all the facilities of Next Management, while on the side, discreetly, they had already opened a company that actually happened in 1995, where Carrying Models of America was registered in America. So they were working with Next Management, with Kate Face, taking all the best models, signing them with Carrying Models of America, and then using the promises and the equipments and everything of that. She quite intelligent, and I think the girls might have talked or something like that, but she found out eventually that these guys were up to no good, and she literally, I think, pressed charges against them or just asked them to leave. And this is their last time they will be working with Kate Face, and the last time they will be associated, or their name will be associated with Next Management. Next Management, by the way, became massive, really big, and a very successful story.
So let me get this straight then. So this program, the expose, revealed or alleged that Brunel was drugging and assaulting prospective models, and yeah, he's just able to move to America and get a clean slate. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, basically that's how it was. I mean, we believe when we looked into the path that he took, I think that as far as France concerned, I think his name was so bad, his reputation was so bad, and not only him, but the people that goes around with him. He had a kind of a circle, a very neat, close circle of friends. They all had a terrible reputation. These are kind of playboy. They're full of money. They're in Paris, sports car. they're flashing money, they're flashing young girls. They're not scared of anything. They do whatever they want. They have beautiful properties, not only in Avenue Hoche, but also on the suburb of Paris, some manors, some beautiful houses. These parties are going on until the end of the night, especially the after parties. This is a kind of a eyes wide shut parties where people are getting pretty mental and anything happen. People knew that these guys were spicing up the girls' drink. If they couldn't get them the straight way, most of them was not very good looking. I mean, Jean Luc Brunel is definitely not a model material, and I don't think Claude Haddad that you saw in the BBC, the CBS documentary was either a pretty guy. So they had to get their way, and if it means that to put a little something, a little spice in the girls' drink, and then there was no problem in doing that. So there was a couple of guys, I can give you name as well, because I think it's important to point the finger at these guys, because they were part of it. Somehow nobody talked about them, and the French police not even asking them any question. But you have guys like Versano, come from a very rich industrial family. You have people like Jean-Yves Le Fur, same guys. He owns the Lui magazine. It's kind of a Playboy magazine. He's a Playboy himself. He's a wannabe. He's always been out there with Jean Luc Brunel, and there were all these guys coming at the apartment of Brunel and partying. And there's many more. There's a huge amount of people. What people need to understand that the relationship Brunel had was for his clients, which means that the people from the fashion industry itself, the buyers, the people that spend money with these model agencies, we need to look after them. They have to look after them. And that's where the girls were going. So that's what this party was about. That's what these dinners was about. It was about to take care of these buyers from the fashion industry, keeping them happy so they keep on spending money with the agency. It's a business. You look after your clients, right?
Yeah. So just to update people then, Fred here has described a kind of Bill Cosby type operation of drugging prospective models' drinks. If they're not throwing themselves at these guys by their charms and good looks, which they are apparently lacking, they're drugging these girls and sexually assaulting them. Yeah. And now this is where Donald McIntyre comes into the picture, because in November 1999, Brunel was mentioned in a BBC documentary where Donald McIntyre revealed the abuse of the young models in the fashion industry in Paris. Yeah. And this was another, situation that Jean Luc Brunel had to kind of control, a PR with a PR angle.
Yeah, absolutely. That was basically the nail in the coffin. That's where McIntyre went undercover, extremely talented journalist, and he just basically come across a complete culture, which was probably shocking to him to see how these guys were treating the girls, literally like meat, basically. I mean, girls coming from around the world, they're 14, 15 years old. Some of them have come from very good family, good backgrounds, strong background. They will know not to go out at night with these guys, not to go back to their apartments. So some of them were disciplined, but there was always these girls, Jean-Luc Brunel was very manipulative. He will promise everything to this girl. He will tell him, look, you work with me, we're a team, so you look after me, I look after you. So you go along with my plan. I'm going to make sure you work. I'm going to show you make good money. So some girls are vulnerable. I mean, they're 14, 15, 16 years old. What do they know about life? They just dream, and they think these guys can make this dream come true. Unfortunately, he's got only one intention, is to abuse them and abuse their youth. So yes, the McIntyre, as you said, the BBC documentary was definitely detrimental about, and really ruined the reputation of Jean-Luc Brunel.
So the next crack in the empire was in 2002, when elite model Karen Mulder described to the French press the culture of sexual misconduct and manipulation prevalent in the modeling industry.
Absolutely. This could do a complete series on Karen Mulder. She was exposed to the entire misconduct and really the bad behaviors in the model agency. She was really one of the top model in France. You can't go higher than that in France. She was really respected. She was really talented, and she was extremely beautiful. She was in the model scene for quite some time. And she started to come public basically with informations about these after parties, this dinner party, and basically this misconduct and this psychological. I think what she really putting the emphasis on is the psychological real mind game that these guys were playing on these girls, in terms of their career, the advancements in the career, arriving and reaching the goals they set out for themselves. So there was a huge psychological warfare on these poor girls, and she described that in many interviews. She actually came on television, on French television, to talk about it, and starting to talk about parties and rituals. And it's really, I mean, when you go deep into that, it gets really spicy and difficult to hear. Obviously, a lot of people starting to come to trying to recover or cover that all things up. And she was sent to a psychiatric ward, and people were basically telling the press and the world that she's basically lost the plot, and she was obviously needed some psychiatric help, which was not even near to be true. She was just upset and she wanted to get out of this world, but she couldn't. She was entrapped, and I think she knows so much about what was going on in this modeling industry. And it took her years for her to come back. And I saw her a few years ago coming back onto a television channel, talking about what happened. And she said, I was depressed. I was not feeling well. That's true. But what I said, everything that I said about the abuse that's going on in this industry is true. She's never changed her story.
So I know that the viewers' curiosity is piqued because you mentioned rituals. Are you aware, did she describe the nature of the rituals?
She's never went too much into details, but well, she did in a way, but we can refer it to pretty much the Stanley Kubrick movie, The Eyes Wide Shut, where old men will have parties with young girls and anything goes. Now, some allegation has been made that it's go way further than that, but I don't like to go down that road, because you need some serious proof before saying that there's some satanic rituals and all that kind of thing. So although, it'd be spicy, it'd be easy for me to spice up the story, but I'm not going to go down that road because I don't have any proof of that. So I'm going to remain humble. I'm going to remain safe and just talk about what I know.
Perfect. Even with these assaults on his career, MC2 Model Management opened offices in New York and Miami in 2005 and in Tel Aviv, Israel. So he's still making a lot of money.
Well, this is the thing, the Karen's models of America is not going to last long. And I think it's important to mention that he's not the director of Karen Model Paris anymore, but he has a name. He has the relationship with Karen Marshberg. She trusted him, but obviously this reputation is going down. I mean, he's everywhere on the press. Each time there is a documentary on model agency, his name pops up, and it's never in great light, So she get pissed off. She's telling him, look, you got to stop using the name Karen Models, even if it's Karen Model of America. I don't care. I don't used to use the brand. And she's going to press him to stop using the brand. And what happened at that time is that he has to basically close Karen Model, or simply change the name of Karen Models of America to MC Square. Everybody called it MC2, but it was never called MC2. It's MC Square. And MC Square will be having office in Miami, will have office in New York, and also a bit later offices in Tel Aviv in Israel. I've got to give you a little anecdote about the Israel office of MC Square. I've took the time to get the address and make sure that I can understand what really we're talking about, which area in Tel Aviv, knowing where these hot areas and these popular areas are in Tel Aviv, asking some Jewish friend of mine where these places are good and where it is. And when you look at the address, this place is a nobody place. I mean, this is not Avenue Foch. This is not Paris Center. This is not New York, and Upper Street Manhattan. This is a shithole. I mean, excuse my French, but this is a place that absolutely has nothing to do with modeling. It's the front of the house. And I have some information about what was going on there, but I'm not yet prepared to say it today because it's still under investigation.
We've got quite an interesting question again from Lena Ruggiero. Thank you, Lena, for you obviously know a lot about this case. She's asked if, let me see, what have I just done with that? She wants to know if Fred has any information about some Uber Brazilian model from Victoria's Secrets involved in this case, Wexner, Brunel, Epstein.
Well, that was the game in town, you know, whether it's Ghislaine Maxwell, whether Epstein or Jean Luc Brunel, they were all using this apparatus of Victoria's Secret. This was basically a bait. This is how they were getting this girl to sign in or to come in. They were promising them careers with Victoria's Secrets and so on and so forth. So that Uber things, I've heard of it, but nothing has come to light today because this is more onto the Epstein-Les Wexner relationship. And I don't think really, I think Brunel might have been used or might have been come involved with Brazil and getting this girl, but we all know in this investigation that Jean-Luc Brunel used to get huge amount of girls from Brazil, especially from the state of Santa Catarina, the southern part of Brazil, because there's a community of German-speaking, blonde, blue-eyes girls, because Epstein is not into, dark lady or colored lady, and he doesn't understand, he doesn't appreciate the variety of the human species. He only like frail, pale, white, and blonde. So that's really quite restrictive as far as recruiting into Brazil. And he used to recruit all across South America, by the way. I mean, Peru, Uruguay, Argentina. He used to go everywhere. And I think he was a personal hunter as well. He was not hunting only for Jeffrey Epstein. I think he has some personal choices as well. And he was bringing them back to Miami too for his own personal pleasure as well. But as far as the Uber, I don't have enough information to comment on that, unfortunately.
There's another question then. I know Alessandra Ambrosio was on the Lolita Express, but I'm wondering if Fred has any famous names with the possible involvement.
Well, the famous name has already been released, in the Epstein's Black Book, but I would like to say to people that this is just scratching the surface. This book, there's much more than that. And the piece that is missing in this entire investigation, these are the flight logs from the other private jets. You need to understand that the Lolita Express was used, but in the late 80s and so on, he was using a lot of his private jet, the one that he brought from the company that belongs to the Limited, that belongs to Les Wexner. He brought two private jets there. I think it's called the N115JE and the N119JE. These are the jets that he used to come in France, and he will never land in Charles de Gaulle, never land in Orly, the main airport of the French capital. He will land in Le Bourget, which is a smaller airport. It's like me visiting you with a private jet coming to London. I'm not going to go flying in London Heathrow or London Stansted, city airport. I'm going to come to Luton, So why was that? All these kind of things. There are big names. We're waiting for the U.S. Virgin Island Attorney General inquiry, which have asked and requested Judge Loretta Prescott to provide and to subpoena all these flight logs, all these records about all the other private jets as well as the helicopter. What she's trying to determine, which is also all the investigators is trying to determine, is who else was involved. Who were the girls, who were the guys flying with Epstein outside of the Lolita Express? We've got big name already, been Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Prince Andrew. It's not going to get bigger than that. You're going to get Ehud Barak. You're going to get some top guys, ministers, former presidents, you name it. This is as big as he gets. You don't need to get higher than that. What you want now is that who were the people that makes things happen, the people that enable all this to happen. And that's probably in the other flight logs. So that would be the best answer I can give you without revealing or saying things that I'm not aware of.
I'd be curious then, who are the biggest French names?
Well, there's 18 names in the black books, even more. Some of them have been taken away from the media themselves. They just wipe it out. One that is very interesting is the daughter of Jack Lang being the former Minister of Culture and the former Minister of Education in France. And he's got two daughters. One lives in the United States, and she was very well acquainted with Jeffrey Epstein, but the father was also extremely well acquainted with Jeffrey Epstein. The rest are families. You have, from different industry, you have people, you have the Pintos, we are decorators. I mean, I could go through it, but I'm sure the people interested in these stories have already saw the French list or saw that kind of informations. I don't think it add up much. What's important is what you can prove. You can put thousands of them in this inquiry. It's not going to get you near to the truth unless you have records. You have records that's going to tell you this person was here at this particular time in this particular place. And that's what lawyers, that's what judge needs. They need evidence, because with evidence we can get conviction. So the rest is just speculations. Why an decorator, a well-known, renowned world decorator, is a friend of Jeffrey Epstein? Well, because he's obviously have many properties and he needs his apartment to be decorated. All the other name that comes, many of the French people have come forward already and explained why were they on this black book, but most of them, they were just providing services. Some of them are definitely POI, person of interest, and we are looking into them. But yet again, as I said to you offline, Shaun, we are in the middle of investigation. So that's why I'm a little bit reluctant to talk about these people right now, because less we say, better it is. We want to take them by surprise with the information that we are gathering, and there will be a time for them to get their day.
Okay, so we're still on part one right now. We're going over the trajectory of Jean Luc Brunel's rise and the challenges and the fall in the modeling industry. So right now we're on 2019, and it was reported that Brunel helped create a modeling agency in Kiev, Ukraine, where he was a silent partner. We know that because in 2017, Vladimir Yudashkin, one of the creative directors and photographer, declared that he left One Mother Agency because he could no longer bear to lie on the behalf of Jean Luc Brunel.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. I mean, the management of One Mother Agency in Kiev in Ukraine always denied any involvement. They knew Jean Luc Brunel, but they always denied that he was part of the ownership of this company. But he was just a silent partner, and I understand why they don't want to be associated with him, especially from the ownership part of him, because from a legal point of view, and I think the informations and the inquiry, any person that does investigation on Jean-Luc Brunel will find out that Jean-Luc Brunel had a massive network in Eastern Europe, from Lithuania, Latvia, all the way down to Ukraine. Czech Republic was a destination as well that he really liked to go to. But Ukraine was the central point, because Ukraine is accent to a lot of Russian young girls ring, prepared to do pretty much anything to go on the other side of the Atlantic and spend some good time and partying in Miami. So Brunel and also Epstein's loved these young girls from Ukraine, and there was a big, obviously, traffic in between Ukraine and especially Miami. Also, some of them will go eventually to New York. So that's the reason why Yudashkin saw and he knew what was going on, and he was quite honest about it. He said, look, I can't cover for these guys anymore, because it's simply rotten. It simply smells bad. Wherever Jean-Luc Brunel goes, there is something that's going to happen, and people start to feel that something is wrong. There's something wrong about these guys, and there's something wrong about the people he hangs around with. So those that are intelligent enough simply just, separate themselves from him.
So Michael Obonyo has asked, did Jean-Luc Brunel supply children to French political figures and those worldwide like Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, that's a question. That is a very hard question to answer. I believe yes, and I'm going to say allegedly in France, because my investigation shows that there is definitely some link in between Jean-Luc Brunel, Epstein, but also some French VIPs. Let's say, we're going to put it that way, some French VIPs. So there was definitely access to a pedophile ring that is I would say some of it are based in France, other are based in Spain and also in Germany and Holland. That's all I can say right now. But yes, there is a pedophile ring, extremely well financed, extremely powerful in Paris. And this has been going on for years and decades. And I believe that somehow Jean Luc Brunel found his entrance into this world and was able to pretty much get anything he wanted. And I think that's also certain VIP elite aristocrats and politicians in France definitely had their hand on that. We're going to talk about it a little bit later further down, because we're going to talk about Jack Lang. Jack Lang was the former Minister of Culture and Education in France, and his name has popped out. Each time there's a pedophile ring, each time there is a sordid story about child molestation or children being abused, somehow his name is always mixed with that. The guy is extremely close friend with Woody Allen, very close friend with Roman Polanski, which definitely have a rather spicy reputations around children. I know I would not give them my kids to look after, and they are all hiding in France, you know, while they're being prosecuted in the United States, and they're still already being charged. There's an arrest warrant for their arrest in the United States, and they're hiding in France in plain sight. It's disgusting.
So as we're just rounding up section one, then just my thoughts on what you've just said about the Ukraine and the other countries in that region. We saw that Virginia said that Epstein boasted he slept with over 1,000 of the girls that Jean Luc Brunel had procured. We saw on the flight logs with Clinton, we saw sometimes he went with his Secret Service guys on the Lolita Express, other times he didn't. And there was a plethora of East European names on those flight logs. Yep. And we also saw Virginia say that on the island, at the orgy that Prince Andrew, she said, participated in, was a bunch of underage who were from Eastern Europe who couldn't even speak English.
Yeah.
And that the predators, Epstein, Maxwell, were joking and boasting that these were the easiest girls to get. They don't speak any English.
Yeah.
And so that just ties in. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Shaun. This is Jean-Luc Brunel's work. There's no other people that could have done that. I don't think Epstein had near the time to get involved in this nonsense. Jean-Luc Brunel was basically the recruiter. He was the person that was providing girls not only for his agencies, but using the cover of the agency to bring underage girls wherever Epstein wanted them. So that's what was the deal in town, and that was the deal with regards to their relationship. Their relationship was very simple. And just to give you a context, I think it's very important to understand how that has all happened. You need to understand that Jean-Luc Brunel was broke as when the brother, Arnaud Brunel, and Etienne Desrats, which was the financiers of Karen Models of America, when they saw all this, this rampage and this nonsense and all this public attention, they got scared. They pulled out their money and then they took a ticket back to France. Now, Jean-Luc Brunel is in Miami. He's stuck there. The money needs to come in. He's got models. He's got bills. He's got apartments. And this is at the time, and we're going to link it into, obviously, the first time that Jean-Luc Brunel will meet with Jeffrey Epstein. And that meeting is extremely important to understand when it happens, how it happened, why it happened. A lot of people have asked this question, but they were not able to actually pinpoint that particular time. I think I've managed to do that. And I'm happy to give a little bit more explanation on how this whole thing happened. But yes, there was a lot of girls from Eastern Europe brought to the Little St. James. This happened. You can see already on the Lolita Express, it's on the flight logs, but you will see with the other flight logs that it was just an industry. It was come and go. It was a big sex trafficking ring. Some of them will use for different purposes, and we will talk about that also during this conversation.
You mentioned that certain famous figures are being protected by residing in France, and questions come in here is why is France protecting them?
Well, it's a good question. It's simply because the judicial system is a kind of a fence for the nerve and the central power of France. So whoever has control of the judicial system is able to control the police, is able to control pretty much all the intelligence and the agencies. And in any case, all the case we've investigated, and if you speak with investigators in France that have investigated the pedocriminality and the pedophile ring in France, they will all tell you that it involves the police, it involves the DGSIs, which is the French FBI, that's the best way I can put it, and it involves also the Justice Department, which is the Ministry of Justice, which means prefects, people that are responsible basically to press charges, to accept the statements and move this statement and escalate this statement to actually real charges against perpetrators. And this is always, when it goes to the justice system, it gets struck out. It never goes any further. And then straight away, there's a communication plans that takes place, kind of a communication crisis whereby the ministry, the governments will all come and ask people to minimize. It's the word they use a lot. They always say minimize. You must minimize. This is not as bad as you've been told. Don't believe everything you've been told. So they always put it under the rug, and eventually time passes, and it's another story that disappears from the television. Television is not helping whatsoever. That's why they're getting away with it, because it's a number of elements and people and group of people that works together to make sure that it disappears from the screen and it disappears from the newspaper, and eventually the docket will disappear and the business, the affair will be class. There's not going to be any follow-up. It's done. It's gone.
Just want to give a huge shout out to the Epstein victims, Virginia, Maria Farmer, and all the other brave victims for really keeping this case in the media spotlight. They're really active on Twitter, and I'm going to put the Twitter handles as well as Fred's Twitter handle in the description box below this video once we finish the live stream. But this next question ties into that, because I did see the victims calling out Naomi Campbell. And I know from looking at police interviews on this case, police have said that anyone who went in Epstein's properties, went to his parties, they saw all the pictures of the girls on the walls, naked, semi-naked. They saw the girls in the background. They could not possibly not have known what was going on. So this guy's asking you, Fred, Willie Mays Hayes, whether you think that Naomi Campbell was a procurer. I've not heard that she was a procurer of underage girls, but perhaps does your research led you to believe that she had knowledge of what was going on? Perhaps that's maybe a more rational question.
Yeah, I'll be sure. It's going to be a very short answer, but the answer is simply she seems to be always at the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people. That's all I can tell you. But she's definitely been seen around. Really, it's really spooky. Each time you look and you get pictures or information, a name popped out at the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people. So that's absolutely a pattern. Now, whether whether she's done anything to this case or she was involved in some way with that, I cannot say that because I don't have the proof of it. It's just bizarre.
All right, so I'm going to open the chat for questions right now to keep this going for a little bit longer, because we've done an hour and a half on part one. And I think it would be great to start the next live stream with part two. And part two is going to be about the relationship between Epstein and Brunel. And one question has just come in for you, Fred, and that is, do you think that Brunel was part of the intelligence agencies?
That's an excellent question. This is one of the most trickiest questions I've had to ask myself. And when you want to look into it, you're going to have to put the dots together. You got to be almost acting as an intelligence person in order to understand whether he was an intelligence or not. Now, as I say, there is a community here that is at work. There's no doubt about it. And I don't like to single out communities because it's really something I just simply don't like to do. I'm a very open-minded. I have friends from all walk of life, all religions, and it really doesn't bother me whether they're Jewish, whether they're Muslim. It's really Catholic. I was born Catholic myself. My parents are Catholic, so it really doesn't absolutely matter to me where you're from. But one thing I remember when I was young, my mother would say always, you know, show me who you're going around with, and I'll tell you who you are. And it's kind of a stick with me, you know. And as far as Brunel concerned, he's extremely ambitious. He's extremely willing to do pretty much anything. As far as I'm concerned, in terms of crime, when you're a predator, your crime will escalate. And that's what I've seen with Brunel, is that what he was doing and the patterns of behavior that is displayed in France just got really worse over the years, and especially when he was in the United States. And when the trio, the Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, and Jean Luc Brunel got together, this was the epiphany. This is where these three lunatics got together and anything could go. Now, whether he was, to answer your question, whether it was Mossad, whether he was MI6, whether he was, you know, French intelligence, well, none of that. If he was to be intelligence, it will only be intelligence for the Israeli government, because as far as the French government, they don't need someone like Jean Luc Brunel. I don't think they really needed him, because I believe they were already investigating Jeffrey Epstein. So they had a lot of information about Jeffrey Epstein. They didn't wait for him to be arrested in Teterboro in New Jersey. They knew all about Jeffrey Epstein. And I can tell you most of the intelligence services, whether it's MI6, CIA, FBI, or maybe other agencies, but definitely the Mossad, everybody knew and knows exactly what these guys are all about. Jeffrey Epstein is Mossad 100%, Ghislaine Maxwell 100%. Every research point out to this direction. Anybody that has done serious research about that could really put the hand on the book and say, yes, these guys are definitely intelligence, because you don't get away with all these crimes for all. It's insulting. It is simply insulting. How can these guys do this in front of everyone for so long without being caught? And why is the point to have intelligence services if we cannot even spot these lunatics which flying from one country to the next with, you know, underage girls and doing it for 15, 20 years? Come on. These guys are intelligence. They are protected. They have access to networks. Jean Luc Brunel, I think he was a very small player. I think he had no idea what he was getting himself to. But slowly but surely, I think when he accepted the money, this $1 million from Epstein to sponsor, to finance the MC Square model agencies in Miami, but also in New York and Tel Aviv. And that Tel Aviv for me is telling me something. Why on earth MC Square needs to send models to Tel Aviv, unless there is some real purpose? Is there a new fashion industry in Tel Aviv that I'm not aware of? You know, so we saw pictures, and I know a lot of people saw that pictures of Jean Luc Brunel in the islands with Ghislaine Maxwell wearing a US Army from the Israel Corps of Army. Who wear that? You know, a French person will not wear that. We're very proud about our country. I think in the UK, it will be the same. You know, you wear the cap. If you're going to wear something military, it's going to be about something about your own country. But wearing a military cap from a foreign country, well, that's, you know, there is an allegiance somewhere. And we know that Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein had a serious allegiance to Israel, like Robert Maxwell himself, the father of Ghislaine Maxwell. So deduction is that, yes, at least the least he was aware that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell was intelligence. Was he playing a role? Was he given some kind of job or responsibility? I think the inquiry will reveal that. But so far, we have no proof whatsoever that he is intelligence asset.
Josie has asked, does Fred know Douglas Asch, A-S-C-H?
Douglas H. Sorry, H-A-S. Sorry, can you
last name, A-S-C-H.
Douglas Asch.
Yeah.
No, the only Douglas that I know is Douglas Lease, and it's a different guy.
Okay, Maureen has asked, what was Tyra Banks in the mix?
Yeah. That's all I would say, yeah.
She was in the mix. Okay, let me just see if we got, what other questions have we got? I think that's about it then for now. We've just gone over an hour and a half. So I've learned absolutely so much tonight, Fred. I can't thank you enough for coming on. This has been, you know, having researched this case for so long, I've always wanted to speak to someone in France who knew the goods on Jean Luc Brunel, and you've completely delivered those goods this evening. So I can't thank you enough. And for people watching this, when this live stream ends, I'm going to fill in that description box. Fred's YouTube channel is down there. I urge people to go down and support what he's doing and subscribe. His Twitter is going to be down there if you want to reach out to him. So your videos are in French. Can people put UK or English subtitles on those? Or
no, that's probably my message to the audience, whether you're in America or whether you're an English speaker. I will make the effort to bring subtitles to my video, the existing one, the one that are currently available on my channel, but also the upcoming videos which I'm preparing, working on, which will be quite interesting, trust me. So I will make sure that the English subtitles are available. So I really need your support. You know, it's simple as that. In France, nobody's talking about it. There are people completely dedicated to the subject. This is a small market for YouTubers like myself. We're not getting a lot of subscribers because the attention level is very limited. But to make noise, we need to make sure we're going to be on the top of the tabloids. And you know, the algorithm of YouTube for young channel is terrible. It's really penalizing for us. So you know, don't hesitate to support us, because a lot of answers will come from France. That I can tell you. We have a lot of information, but we have also to be careful because it's extremely dangerous in France to talk about pedophilia. I mean, I'm really going to be looking behind my back after this conversation, because people will come and ask me questions. So this is how bad it is, and we have to be careful, but we are absolutely dedicated 100% to give you news on a regular basis about what's going on with this Epstein and Jean Luc Brunel and all the other lunatics that goes around these guys.
So I'm just looking at my calendar right now. I'm filming some podcasts next Wednesday. How are you for next Tuesday evening, perhaps, to do part 2 of this?
Yes, I mean, it is. We got to get the word out, Shaun. So yeah, count me in. I'm in.
So we're deep diving then into Epstein and Jean Luc Brunel. It's going to start to get more intense with the criminality. So huge thank you to everybody watching this. Like I said, in the description box are Fred's links, and I'll put the links down there. I think we must be at about 400 Epstein videos now on this channel, and all our other links will be down there, our socials, donations, and all the other playlists if you guys want to check that out. So again, Fred, thank you so much for coming on. This has been fantastic.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Shaun. Thank you very much. All the best.
Cheers.